Pictures are still coming in from Burma of temples and buildings collapsing and the consequences of the earthquake. The death toll exceeds 1,000, although it is expected to rise. The United States Geological Survey estimates that it could reach 10,000. It's the first time in my life I've felt such strong tremors and shaking, this neighbor says as the aftershocks continue. Hundreds are believed to be trapped under the rubble and the injured number in the thousands, although the information comes in droppings from the country, led by the military junta that staged a coup d'etat in 2021. Given the gravity of the situation, the leader has asked for international help for the first time. China, the main ally of the Burmese junta, has sent a rescue team and will provide more than $13 million in humanitarian aid. Russia has also sent rescuers. And to Rangoon, the largest city in the country, supplies have already arrived from India. The United States has also announced its support, in addition to the European Union and the UN, all to cope with the still incalculable damage from the earthquake that was also felt in neighboring Thailand. This is how the 30-story building that was under construction and collapsed in Bangkok has turned out. There were more than 300 workers inside. Half a hundred are still under the rubble. Those who were on the upper floors could not escape and died, says Tungling, after a night of incessant search with dogs and drones. Rescue efforts continue while family and friends wait, in the hope that their loved ones will get out alive. Hundreds of thousands of people have called for the release of ousted Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu. One day justice will be done, this assistant assures. We want to live without fear, says this other one. There are almost 2,000 detained since the protests began. The main opposition party has called for early elections. Turkish society is not resigned. Turkish society has been accustomed to free and open elections since the 50s and is accustomed to democratic minimums that it is clearly demanding on the street these days. Erdogan's government has imposed sanctions on Turkish television stations for covering the protests and expelled foreign journalists such as the BBC. Erdogan, again, seems to be willing to pay the price of losing much of his democratic legitimacy. The less legitimacy, unfortunately, an increase in repression is expected. At the moment, the international reactions are timid, both on the part of the United States and the European Union, a historical moment in which we may be moving from a regime of competitive authoritarianism to a regime of hegemonic authoritarianism, in which there are elections, but the opposition is not empty of content. The elections would then really be a theater. To do this, says this expert, they could use the accusations of corruption and terrorism against İmamoğlu, Erdogan's main rival and opposition candidate for the presidential elections of 2028. It is beginning to be a fateful tradition that President Zelensky communicates every Sunday. The number of drones that Moscow has launched over all of Ukraine throughout the week, and the normal thing is that they exceed 1,000, and that some escape Kiev's air defenses. Near the front, they are equally the greatest danger, although in a smaller format and faster to produce. They have a flight autonomy of about 40 minutes, less if they carry a heavy load of explosives, explains one of the engineers working in this clandestine workshop. That's enough time to position them over the enemy line. According to the Russian scientific journal Journal of War Medicine, they are 3 times more lethal than artillery. And what there is no doubt about is that they are the cheapest way to kill. With a small strap, the device carries its explosive, from basic grenades to anti-tank ammunition, with or without shrapnel. And the rest of the materials are largely recycled from the Soviet era, explains the commander of the drone unit of the 24th Infantry Brigade, who adds that each of these devices is used for 4 or 5 attacks in round trip, and in the last one, they become kamikaze drones. Other times, we pick up the Russian drones that are made of aluminum, and we continue using them ourselves, one of the pilots tells us. The drone provokes both fear and interest, and classes are organized for young people. Actually, we already learn at the university, but here it is better explained to us by Army veterans, Alexander says. He and his classmates will continue with shooting class tomorrow. No one in Ukraine expects a speedy and just peace.
Daniel Alves has been acquitted of a 4.5-year prison sentence for sexual assault. The High Court of Justice of Catalonia thus revokes the judgment of the Barcelona High Court.
He considers that the victim's testimony presents contradictions and inaccuracies, and that therefore the presumption of innocence should prevail. He assures that it is not a question of credibility, but of lack of evidence against Alves. Dani Alves is acquitted of the crime of sexual assault by the Court of Justice of Catalonia. It was a unanimous decision, but according to the jurists, this does not mean that Alves' thesis is true.
Practically, when a person is considered to be on the loose, we are applying the principle of what is called the presumption of innocence, and therefore it is considered that there has not been enough evidence to consider him guilty.
Que no ha existido la suficiente prueba para considerarle culpable.
This does not mean that there could not have been some facts.
The experts we have consulted insist that this judgment is based on a concrete fact. He considers that there are discrepancies between the victim's account and what the security cameras, DNA tests, and evidence collected in the bathroom show. In addition, it adds the nuance between reliability and credibility.
He considers that the credibility of the victim is there, but not the reliability, and therefore, there are not enough elements to dismantle it.
We can believe someone subjectively, me as a person for my inner self, but understand that there is not enough evidence to access the claim, which in this case is a damning claim. This ruling leaves the precautionary measures without effect. The former footballer recovers his passport and the bail deposited. The court considers that the presumption of innocence prevails because it does not find enough evidence to request his admission to prison. Without the presumption of innocence, we would not have the rule of law.
Only between 8 and 12% of survivors of sexual violence go to the administration of justice.
That is why they insist that the only way to end sexist violence is to denounce it. It is the moment when the civil guard agents proceeded to search the home of one of the alleged members of this organization, dedicated to introducing hashish on a large scale from Morocco through the Guadalquivir. They used powerful boats to transport the drugs, and had a series of logistics plots firm where they planned the caches and hid the vehicles. To highlight the great logistical capacity that this organization had, since they had Zulos where they kept the drugs, and also kept the gasoline with which they later supplied the narcolanches. In total, they had more than 22,000 stored liters of gasoline and up to 452 kilos of hashish. The agents have also intervened to stolen vehicles, 3 boats, and about 55,000 euros in cash. Among the 23 arrested is the one known as El Tarta, a historical drug trafficker. The police pressure in the strait has extended the activity of these organizations to other areas of the Andalusian coast and also to the Guadalquivir, which has become an important gateway not only for hashish, but also for cocaine. Between 10:40 and 40 peninsular time, it is likely that you have seen people looking at the sky, like a warmed-up cheese, one bite. This is what I was seeing, the partial solar eclipse. The Canary Islands has been the first place in Spain where it has been possible to see at 9 and 12 minutes. Canary time has started.
It is projected on the surface of the Earth and is moving from west to east. So, since the Canary Islands are further west, it has reached the Canary Islands sooner than the peninsula area.
When he reached his maximum in Madrid at 11:40, he looked like this. In Galicia, this is where the sun has hidden the most.
It is approximately 42% of the solar diameter that is going to be hidden.
We started, there were a lot less people, and it has been filled in a moment this. Many observatories and groups of astronomers have organized observations all over the country, from the Balearic Islands.
And what we have done has been assembled a fleet of telescopes. Fantastic, it's worth coming to see it.
To Catalonia.
It is much more spectacular than I thought, because 14% seems little. But when you see it, it surprises much more.
Passing through Asturias or the Basque Country, where the moon has not been the only one that has blocked the sun.
Yeah, let's see if we're lucky, and it still clears up a little more, and we keep seeing it. Well, at the moment, what was possible because the clouds do not accompany today.
But this eclipse is just an appetizer.
This eclipse has an importance to prepare us for the next 3 upcoming eclipses. The eclipse of the 26th is total and is only seen as total from a little piece of Iceland, and from this entire area of the Iberian Peninsula.
That's why, for next year, eclipse chasers are expected to come, people who travel looking for such a special event.